The unit circle. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to label the unit circle and you will be able to give sine and cosine coordinates using the unit circle. The unit circle is based on the sine and cosine curve, so I'd like to first of all review what those look like. If you recall, the sine curve starts at 0, then it heads up to 1, then back down through 0, then down to -1, and then back to 0. The cosine curve starts at 1, heads down through 0, goes down to -1, and then heads back up to 1. The important thing that I'd like you to see from this is that the sine curve starts at 0 and the cosine curve starts at 1. So please keep that in mind as we create the unit circle. Okay, on our unit circle, we're not going to be very concerned about degrees in calculus, so I'm just going to deal mainly, I'm just going to fill in the radian measures. So the first thing that I'm going to do is fill in all the angle measures. This first one would be an angle of 0, of course. This, and I'm going to do the main quarters, so this one would be pi over 2. This one would be pi. The next one is going to be 3/2 pi. And then back up top we have 2 pi. So that first one can be labeled 0 and 2 pi. Right, the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and do the quarters. So I'm going to have 1 pi over 4. And then this next one would be 2 pi over 4, which reduces to pi over 2. Then the next one in the middle is going to be 3 pi over 4. Then the next one would be 4 pi over 4, which reduces to pi. And then the next one is going to be 5 pi over 4. The next one would be 6 pi over 4, which reduces to 3/2 pi. The next one would be 7/4 pi. And then the last one would be 8/4 pi, which reduces to 2 pi. All right, the next thing that I'm going to do is deal with the sixths. So this is going to be pi over 6. The next one would be 2 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 3. The next one is 3 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 2. The next one is 4 pi over 6, which reduces to 2/3. The next one is 5 pi over 6. The next one would be 6 pi over 6, which reduces to pi. The next one would be 7 pi over 6. The next one would be 8 pi over 6, which reduces to 4/3. The next one would be 9 pi over 6, which reduces to 3/2. The next one would be 10 pi over 6, which reduces to 5/3 pi. The next one would be 11 pi over 6. And then the last one would be 12 pi over 6, which reduces to 2 pi. So that's how we get our units, our angles, just in case you needed to know how to label them. All right, the next part that we're going to do is actually label the points. The first thing that I'm going to do is just label the normal point. So this would be 1, 0. This point would be 0, 1. This one would be -1, 0. And then down on the bottom, we're going to have 0, -1, and then of course back up to 1, 0. Okay, so if we're looking at which one would represent the cosine and which one would represent the sine, notice that this one, it starts at 1 and this one starts at 0. So when I'm labeling my points, cosine starts at 1 and the sine starts at 0. So the first value is going to be the cosine, the second value is going to be the sine. All right, when I'm filling these numbers in, I am going to be looking at, this one starts at 1 and I need to end up at 0, so my numbers are going to be getting smaller, and I know that you're familiar with the unit circle, so I'm just going to kind of start filling things in. This first one would be the square root of 3 over 2, and then it has to get smaller, so the next one's going to be the square root of 2 over 2, and then I've still got to get smaller to the square root of 1 over 2, which reduces to 1/2, and then back to 0. Okay, the next one starts at 0 and then it gets bigger. So I'm going to start with the square root of 1 over 2, which is 1/2, and then the square root of 2 over 2, and then the square root of 3 over 2, and then technically it would be the square root of 4 over 2, which reduces to 1. Okay, now once I know the first quadrant, I basically know all the other quadrants as well. I can just kind of go through and do it. The first thing, everything that has a 6 on the bottom is going to have coordinates of square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. It just is going to be different with positives and negatives. So I'm going to go to the ones that have 6's in them. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put the square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. The only change I'm going to make is the x value on this one needs to be negative. Okay, and then I'm going to go down to this one. Again, it's going to be square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2, and both the x and the y will be negative. And then I'll go to the other one that has a 6 in it. This one is also square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2, and this time the x will be positive and the y will be negative. So we've just done that. Okay, now I'm going to tackle the pi over 4s. So all the pi over 4s have square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. So this one will have square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, and my x value will be negative on that one. And then down here, 5/4 pi, again, both of them will be square root of 2 over 2, and both the x and the y coordinates are negative. And then over here, the 7/4 pi, again, square root of 2 over 2, and square root of 2 over 2, and our x coordinate will be positive and our y coordinate will be negative. All right, so my next one is my pi over 3s, so they'll all be 1/2 and the square root of 3 over 2. So 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. And the next thing that I'm going to do, the x value will be negative on that one. So I'll go down here. I've got 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Both the x and the y will be negative. And then over here, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. My x's are positive and my y is negative. All right, so that is pretty much that. So hopefully now, if I were to ask you, like, what is the cosine of pi over 6, if you have your unit circle drawn, it's pretty easy to answer, because the cosine of pi over 6, you would just be able to look at it now, and it's just the square root of 3 over 2. If I ask you for the sine of 3/4 pi, you could easily just look for the y value at 3/4 pi. You could just look for the sine of 3/4 pi, which is the square root of 3 over 2. So once you have the unit circle drawn, it's pretty easy to do. In my next video, I'll be showing you a trick so that you don't actually have to draw the unit circle to figure things out.